I just said that.
Welcome, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. Friday, April 24th. We're starting the morning off real quick with Scott Moore from our JFO office. The Senate Institutions Committee did vote out Capitol Bill yesterday afternoon. And we made some changes. There's also a little bit of language change as well. We'll get a copy of the bill next week. But also for folks, it is in the Senate calendar. Today's Senate calendar is there. And there isn't too much language change, but there is some. So, Scott, it is.
Morning, committee. For the record, Scott Moore, Joint Fiscal Office. I wanted to touch bases with you. The Senate did pass out the Capitol bill out of institutions last night at about 4 o'clock, and we can walk through some changes. I tried to match the color of the top, which I believe I said I'm wearing earlier. It's more of a sherbet at this point. I tried to match that with my jacket. I did my best.
That's
So if you want, I can go through top to bottom, and we can talk through everything real quick. Starting with line 1, statewide major maintenance. In the bonded section, the Senate removed $475,000 from line 1.
They needed money.
Correct. And as we go through, we can talk. I can kind of give you a running balance of the money. It might be easier to go through the bonded section first, and then come back and touch on the cash section. The cash section is a little easier. So right now, if they remove $475,000 from the FY27 bonded and major maintenance, that gives us a balance, running balance of $475,000. On line 12, the Montpelier State House entryway upgrades, they added $25,000 for design of a second floor fire escape. Now our running balance is at $450,000.
It's gonna be an issue. Can't just put a fire escape up there. What you're gonna do is block off some windows, particularly in the House chamber. Maybe get rid of the cloakroom on the Senate side, reconfigure the Transportation Committee.
Yeah.
All of that, and that will raise an over $30 million project. And the Joint Legislative Management Committee had said no to it.
I did get a chance to see you all walk on the fire escape yesterday.
Yeah, so we'll have to talk about that one.
But I have to fix the parking lot.
The 25,000 was added just for the design of the fire escape. Line 27, Northern State Correctional Facility. A couple things happened here. There was subtraction of $500,000 from the bonded. And then they added $500,000 in cash. So basically just a flip-flop. Going through with our running balance, now we currently have a running balance of $950,000 to spend, if you will. Line 29, the Northern State Correctional Facility boiler. There was an addition of $700,000 to FY27 bonded. And for our running balance, now we're down to $250,000 that we have not spent as of yet. Line 32, renovations at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. A couple of things happened here. One, the language has changed. So it was not just to add money for a replacement facility, but also to have money for renovations of the current facility. So that way they could use this money today as opposed to just waiting for the brand new facility to be built. We added $598,850 in bonding. It's a little bit of an odd number, and I'll show you where that came from here in a little bit. We also removed money from the cash. So the cash went down by $750,000, and the bonding went up by $598,850. For those keeping score, we're now at a negative $348,850 in FY27 bonding. Line 32A is a brand new line, and this is for Recovery House Inc.
That's a individual earmark.
Yes, it would go through AHS, I believe is what John said. He
We
did
said
say.
no.
That's everything they wanted, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which one?
It's your cabinets.
Good point.
That was what they requested, right?
That was the request, correct?
Yeah.
Our running balance is currently now negative $568,850. Line 46 and 47, both of those lines, the Senate added $100,000 for FY27 bonded And if you add those to $100,000, we are currently now at negative $768,850. So we have overspent in the bonding section. And then line 83A is also a new line, and this is for A&R for technical support to municipalities designing and implementing stormwater utilities. And that gives us currently a grand total of negative $868,850 in the bonded section. Now, you may ask me, Mr. Moore, where'd that money come from? If you go to the last page, one brand new line
Very last page.
in the reallocation section, line 175A is a brand new line. This is old Women's Correctional Facility money. That money would be coming back to us statutorily next year. That currently, that debt ID currently has $868,850 in it. Now, our running balance for our bonded is zero. We've taken that money and basically spent it all, so we are in balance for our bonded section.
So why are we showing on the very bottom 206, deficit bonding of 395?
That was because last year we spent more. I'm sorry, this year, hold on. Last year we had money left over and this year we spent more money. So if you look to the right of that, you'll see a zero. In the bottom column, last year we spent less, this year we spent more. But it's still balancing.
God, back on lines 46 and 47.
Yes, sir.
What's the logic behind adding $100,000 of bonding to an HP and bonding program?
I don't want to speak for Laura, but she did say that those programs could use some more money for some other, they have more grants that are asked for than they have money for. And so Senator Harris felt that adding $100,000 would help fund more of those grants.
So when we build the building community grants, when we built that, it was to take care of those individual court projects that are coming through this committee and the Senate Institutions Committee. And we were very, very clear that the grant programs for each one of those would receive the same amount of money as all the other grants. We weren't going to pick and choose and have some receive more money than others because they all had needs. And that was an agreement that was always made. That on the table for folks to think.
Back on line 175A. $868,850. Where did that magically appear from and why didn't we know about it until now? Or is it something that I'm missing?
The repo committee did look through BGS projects that had money. This money was not statutorily required to come back to us. It would be 5 years after. So next year it'd be 5 years. It will have to come back to us. And so what we talked about in the repo committee was we're going to leave this money here with the women's facility, knowing that that's a $100 million project. In the course of discussions with the commissioner, BGS, the Senate was looking for some more money. Specifically, the commissioner mentioned the women's community could use some money for more repairs, renovations, that kind of stuff. So what we did basically was we took it a year early, and that money would then be specifically earmarked for this project. Typically, the way the repo committee works and what the governor does, he goes through at the start of the budget process and he checks with every single department and says, here's capital money. You're going to use it. You're not going to use it. I'm going to take it if you're not going to use it, basically.
Okay.
And he'll assign to properties he might have. In this particular case, what this does is it does take that money from before, which would have come to the bottom line next year, but now it restarts the clock, if you will, and gives the commissioner a little bit more flexibility to use that money for renovations this year.
Okay, thank you.
So we put in 1.5 million.
Right.
Cash into this facility. They pulled that out.
They pulled out most of it. They pulled out all $750,000 of the cash they pulled out, leaving $500,000 in there in cash.
So where does that show up?
Yeah, we haven't talked about the cash yet. I can go through those real quick, Madam Chair.
It's not, we didn't write it up in a separate section because we had it in the DOC section. Or in DOC, I don't see anything except for the maintenance and renovations of.
Correct. So we did change the wording. So if we look,
We have 1.2 million that we've been.
Now it's down to 500, so line 32, yeah. So the wordings has been changed to now be maintenance and renovations at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, so not just replacement. With the language of just replacement, it goes into the bank, if you will, for the future. By having this change to maintenance renovations allows them to spend money today to start working on, correct me if I'm wrong, but she talked about some shower issues, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Drainage, those kind of things.
So we put in 1.25 in cash in the new facility.
Right.
So what they've basically done is pulled 700,000
750, yeah.
from the cash to go somewhere. And then they put in 500,000 in bonded, which is part of the reallocations.
Right. Now, the way that happened to work was, this was the last change we made yesterday at about 3:40. Looking for some more money to be able to fund some other projects. We took the 868,000, used some of that money, and it's all fungible, so I hesitate to say we specifically took this money to fund this project. But what we did was say, whatever leftover there happens to be, we're gonna add it back to the women's prison, reset that clock. It's gonna come back to this bill anyway next year, and then have that minor tweak in the language to allow them to have more money. I don't want to quote the commissioner and get it wrong, but she mentioned the project. Some current renovations could be 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, somewhere in there, for some of that. And I don't want to misquote Commissioner Manoli, but
So there was a reallocation of bonded dollars from previous money for the women's facility from, when was that? No.
21. Yeah. So next year we come back.
So 568 of that went towards maintenance needs there now, and the rest 300 went somewhere, everywhere else.
207, yes, Madam Chair. And looking at the cash real quick, not as many changes, but just go through all of those. On line 4, statewide 3-acre parcel stormwater compliance, the Senate added 1 million to the FY27 cash. Going through the same process, now we have a balance of negative 1 million we have to find funding for. Northern State Correctional Facility sprinkler system added $500,000 to the cash. So we have a running balance of negative 1.5. And door controls, Department of Corrections statewide, adding 2 million to FY27 cash. And again, now our running balance is negative 3.5. And the Wi-Fi installation had been 3 million here in this committee. The Senate took 2.75 million in cash to fund the other things we've seen so far. Now I have a running balance of negative 750,000. And then line 32, the Women's Correctional Facility, they removed that 750,000 in cash. So now our current cash balance for this exercise is 0. So everything balances out. I've done my job, yay.
Okay. So,
I know I spoke quickly, but I know you have another guest. I didn't want to interrupt.
so I want the committee to at least get the new spreadsheet. This will then go to the finance committee, we'll go to approves. We'll be on the floor, probably Senate floor towards the end of next week, is probably the thinking. Come over here. And then our next thing will be to go over the language. We'll get language next week, but it's in the Senate calendar today, the amendment. So you folks can read that. And then we just had to determine, do we concur with proposal of amendment? Do we concur with further proposal of amendment? Or do we not concur and set up a conference? That's what will be the next step. Then we have to present that to the floor, and then whatever we recommend, the floor votes. If it goes to conference, there'll be 3 members from this committee, 3 members from the Senate committee. And it will meet and negotiate. And then we get done with that, right?
Nothing else to do.
There are no other bills. That's everything.
Home stretch, yeah.
And for the committee's knowledge, finance day, I'll be there at 1 to go through this. So that'll be one committee will be done at least.
Good. Questions? Anything? Okay.
Thank you, Scott. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Good weekend, sir.
Thank you.
Work.
We actually need to, one meeting specifically.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it home and send it.
Sorry, I have another chair.
Oh, wow.
One chair. It's the last one. We- Sunday, yeah.
If only I could believe you, Haley.
Well, I didn't know.
The lesson learned, if you're new and you go to your committee, do not dawdle. First day, you'll get stuck in the corner.
Some of us just don't learn. Teach me to be late.
Some chairs have a seating, tell people where to sit. I try not to do that. So I did with you. because
Yeah, I was-
Brian is coming in.
Yeah, I sat there. and-
But that's moving wise. He's shorter than you.
Oh, easier to get around or something?
Yeah, because I knew the person who walked behind the witness.
She's more of a point guard to my big man in the paint.
Yeah, not-
I mean, Gina would have worked, but Gina already had her seat.
Some days, depending on who's in here, I can't even move at all.
Will would have worked, but Will was already there. And I like to mix it up. I like to mix up parties. I like to mix up gender.
Wait, what are we? I'm sorry.
No, you were sitting there.
Oh,
So we're gonna shift gears, go back to corrections, I'm most favorite. Brian recommended that we bring in a superintendent of the women's facility. We have a new superintendent here. She's been there a few months. But also, we know that we've been talking about replacing the women's facility for a number of years. We don't know what to do anymore. We still want to replace the facility. And we thought it would be a good time just to check in to see what pressures are there right now in the facility. There's a lot of pressure happening. There's over 170 folks, 180 folks who are coming in. Half of that population is really detainees. We'd like to get more of a handle in terms of what's the driving force behind all this? What do we do if we keep increasing our numbers on the women's facility? What are the options here? So we just thought it would be a good general conversation. So are you both coming up? 1, 2? Haley, you're not coming up, right? No. We could visit. So it's on the sidelines. So welcome. And if you both could introduce yourself, I got a sneeze for the record. Right.
I'm Carolyn Riley. I'm the superintendent at Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. I came here from Massachusetts. My background is in treatment within correction. And I completed my degrees at Suffolk University and Southern Virginia University. I'm currently working on dissertation with a focus on correctional officer ethics and their attitudes towards treatment and the outcomes of treatment post-release. So let's see, where do I start? I think that's a brief introduction.
Amy Jacobs, facilities director. I've been in corrections for approximately 18 years. I think I met most of you at Southern on Wednesday, was it? Maybe just kind of go together.
Seems like it was only yesterday, but then it seems like it was a long time ago. So it's really gonna be more of an open conversation. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of questions, but if you could kind of give us an overview, how long you've been at the Chittenden facility, what you've seen in a short period of time, and maybe what surprised you, and maybe some issues that you're dealing with.
So I started the beginning of January here at Chittenden. Before that, I had worked in corrections since 2001 with a little sachet over to being a crime law and justice professor. And so I've seen the academic side as well as the operation side of corrections. Since I've been at Chittenden, I have seen a facility that is aging in desperate need of repairs in order to be humane to the individuals that are in our care. There are some deferred maintenance issues that continue to affect the daily lives of the individuals that we are responsible for caring for. And with the idea that we do have a future hope for a new women's facility, I think it's extremely important for us to address the issues that are affecting the daily lives of the women that we currently have in our capacity, which is, you know, over the initial head count from the original building design.
I want to interrupt there. It's cool. Don't put you on the spot. So I know you wouldn't be able to answer this because you've only been there since January, but Amy, maybe you could answer it, or Cole. This request from BGS came while our capital bill was in the Senate. And we know some of these items have been ongoing. So the question I had, was this in a request from BGS to the administration? When back in the fall, did DOC request capital dollars for upgrades to the Chittenden facility when they submitted their request to the 5th floor for inclusion in the capital bill? Because I'm just surprised this comes in, I'm not blaming anybody, but this comes in the last week or two to Senate institutions, and I just wonder if this had been in the hopper and been requested of the 5th floor when they were putting together the request for capital budgeting, because we don't see that list anymore like we used to. So you may not be able to answer that. Haley, I don't know.
I think Cole would probably know best. I'm gonna let him.
Nice.
You've been doing this a while, yeah.
I mean, I can reach out to people too.
I just want to know if this was sort of out there and was requested to be included in the budget adjustment, because we don't get that list like we used to.
You said you're asking someone right now. I'm asking Commissioner.
Because I'm not blaming you. Don't worry about
If I
that.
may offer, I know that the idea was that the facility was, you know, almost guaranteed, and then it was voted down by Essex Junction. So my guess is that, you know, this was put all in one, you know, one basket for the future institution and maybe not.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I know what you're saying. That's where they ended up getting the money from, but that's not the angle that I'm coming from. We knew back in the fall that Essex wasn't going forward. We knew that. DOC and BGS know the condition of that facility. Even if Essex had come through, we're still 5 years out from opening a door. Even if Essex had come through. So this renovation and the needs there didn't just pop up in the last few weeks after we voted our bill out. So I want to know if it was requested of the government, the 5th floor, to be included in this year's capital bill.
Just heard back from the commissioner, and yes, we did request that in the fall.
That's the issue committee, when we don't get the list of what the requests were to the 5th floor. And that list used to be presented to us, so at least we knew what was out there. And if we had known about this, we could have started to address this when we were going through testimony with our capital bill in March, and it wouldn't have had to come in at the last minute. And I'm not blaming you, I'm not blaming you folks. But
Is it a new 5th floor policy that we don't get?
yes, they're saying we get the 10-year plan. And the 10-year plan is on the current projects that are on our spreadsheet. But in the past, we've always gotten list of what was requested, not funded necessarily, but what was requested from the departments. So that we knew what was in the hopper and it gave us a bigger picture. And now it's dependent on the folks coming forward to testify. And if they don't share with us what they really need, we're held in the dark.
Well, that's about the same.
And our hands are behind our back. This is just one situation, which is too bad, because this is life and safety issues. This is life and safety issues of people who are under our custody. We have to remember that the folks are under state custody. We have a responsibility to folks who are under our custody. It's our duty.
You use the word humane. And so it would be helpful to me as a freshman, second session, freshman. Examples of what is inhumane at this point with the old facility that needs to be replaced.
Well, I would say that we have had issues with ventilation at the facility. Our heating and cooling is something that is not consistent. Sometimes our radiators will be hot to the touch, and the way that the facility is set up, we have individuals that are climbing up a plastic set of stairs so they don't have to step on the hot radiator. And so that's one. But also, like, we've got showers right now that are undergoing treatment for pests, because there's basically a whole ecosystem that's living underneath the showers, where we have insects coming up, and so it's being treated. It's under control for right now, but these are things that are probably due to the geographical location of it. We're on the edge of a creek swamp area, so it's not necessarily, anything that's preventative. It's something that as it comes up, it's something that's addressed. You can't predict that there's going to be critters coming up through the shower. So it's right now being addressed. The individuals who are in 5 individuals in a cell, as far as just those closed quarters, are probably not the most sanitary. But we do a very good job of sanitation. It's routine, it's consistent, it's continuous, ongoing. But if it's something that we have an individual who's sick, who's normally in charge of that, it's a matter of getting someone else to come in, step in to do it. And let's see what else. We have an infirmary that is not really an infirmary right now. It is a room that is has a couple of beds in it, but we are not at a point where we could treat an individual who could normally be treated in another institution that has a designated medical unit. We have a unit that was an empty room that's been converted into an infirmary. So we have hospital beds in there, but we don't have the means to be able to treat these individuals. So they may have to stay in the hospital for longer because we don't have the means to treat them. Whereas normally they could come back, we could have the dedicated staff in that type of a unit to address their medical needs. We also have individuals in our care that are long-term. So as the population ages, we have individuals who are going to require additional services, additional care, and we are not prepared for that in our current facility.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Just to add to that, I would just mention like the floors, like the tiles on the floors are coming up. We had someone trip over a tile, a staff member trip over a tile. So like the tiling around along actually almost all of the corridors, like it really needs to be replaced. It's not safe. So there's a bunch of track tiles, they're coming up, lifting up. So
I also just wanted to add, and thank you both for that explanation. When the facility was built, it was built as a short-term detention facility for men. So everything that we've done with the space is essentially retrofitting space that wasn't made for that use. So really trying to make the best use of what we have, but nothing was made for the needs of the women in that facility today.
And that facility was built in the late sixties, early seventies. Early seventies. Came on after St. Albans. Trent?
Can you give me a sense of what the short term? And is that 5 years, 8 years, 10 years? I don't know, short-term renovation plan is how you're prioritizing that in anticipation of a new facility, right? What are you? I don't want to say, what are you not right, but right, how are you prioritizing the short-term renovations within the context of the hope that I think most of us, if not all of us, have in this room of finding a way to move forward on a new facility?
We're prioritizing immediate needs. For example, we are, I think actually today, they were wrapping up our complete ADA compliance.
Yes.
So that we have individuals that are able to access the same services as everyone else who are disabled. That is one area. We also have. So I would say the immediate critical needs we are addressing, things such as safety. And for a broad macro perspective, we're bringing things back to basics as far as security is concerned, and replacing doors that have been compromised by the weather.
What are you hoping to just squeak by with before, like, let's anticipate a new facility in the next 8 years? What are you hoping to, what's on your list of, I hope this makes it?
Well, I'll tell you what I hope doesn't make
into
it, which is the courts making excessive incarceration recommendations. Because we are above capacity and we are always within 4 to 5 individuals in our care away from having to close down our gym and make it housing unit.
Yeah.
So that would, at this time of year, going into the spring and fall, seems like it could be an option because we do have the option of outdoor recreation.
Yeah.
But the fall and the winter, when that may not be an option, that is on the horizon for being something that I would consider to be inhumane. They're not going to be able to have recreation, which means you have 5 women in a cell all day, all night, that can come out to a day room, interact with each other, but not get fresh air.
Yeah.
So that is something that is, definitely on my periphery.
But the 1 million that's been put in on the Senate side is gonna get you that kind of stuff. It's gonna get you the showers, toilets. The drainage.
Yes.
That may be all it gets you. Just to be clear. Right.
So lots and lots of questions, but I'll just stick with one for now. And I'm the Brian who asked you to come here, so thanks. I'm from South Burlington. I'm walking distance from the facility. Lots of interest from people in my neighborhood, just in general, but also some people who are volunteers, all the way up to those who would, seek the abolition of prisons altogether. So lots of different perspectives. One thing that I have heard, and this goes back to the gym question and overcrowding, is that with the ADA retrofit, it hasn't been possible even, and I'm not saying the weather's been nice, but to get outside to use the yard at all. And so I'm wondering, what ability have these overcrowded women had to get to the gym, to get outside? And it sounds like the ADA stuff is wrapping up.
Yes.
And so, yeah, to what degree is that improving? I know you started to address that with Troy, but.
I would say they've had access to recreation consistently all along. I'm not sure where that comes from. We did have to temporarily ban a few volunteers from coming in due to things like House One needing to move for the ADA retrofitting, Foxtrot unit having to spend the day in the gym so that none of the other units could recreate in the gym. But then if you've got 2 feet of snow out in the rec yard, you can open it up and they can walk back and forth, and that's what they get for rec, unfortunately. But we have had consistent recreation, and I do have documentation for that, just in case.
Yeah, no, and I'm well aware that there are lots of different filters that I'm hearing things through, but yeah, so I'd love to hear your version of how things have been.
Yeah, and with this beautiful weather that we're currently having, we do expect more individuals to take up the offer to be able to go outside. and get the fresh air as opposed to staying inside. But we do have an individual that comes in that volunteers to do pickleball, and that is,
We heard from that. Is that bad? It's pickleball.
it's bad, yes, yes. And ladies love it, and it brings out some friendly competitiveness amongst them, and it gets their, blood moving and
People
air
get
in their
real fired
lungs.
up
and-
about pickleball.
Yes, they love it. They do love it. Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. How are you looking as far as vacancies and recruitment and retention generally at Chittenden?
That's an excellent question. We're currently recruiting, heavily recruiting. We are using as many resources as possible, including our own team who is out there in the community going to school job fairs at local colleges and universities. We have an Indeed profile, word of mouth, but we're heavily recruiting females because we are primarily, male staff, which may not be the best fit for, the individuals in our custody. So we are heavily recruiting. We have 3 that are graduating from the academy today. And then we do, I've met with 3 individuals over the past 3 weeks who seem to be fantastic that we will be anticipating putting through the next academy. But we're doing the best we can, making promotions and promoting supervisors that do have a well-rounded awareness of the differences between being responsible as far as, custody and care of females is concerned. So we do have a curriculum called Safety Matters that is directed towards the supervision of females within corrections that each individual officer and staff member will be trained on by the supervisors in the very near future. But we started to implement some of those ideas and practices. And so just reiterating that, hopefully with the new officers coming online, we're going to start fresh and really turn over a new leaf as far as the institution's concerned. I would like to bring about positive change for the institution and attempt to minimize the attitudes that are characteristic of correctional officers. I would like them to be more treatment and security focused, not just simply incarcerate and warehouse and move on. So I do have a bit of a personal agenda in that.
And how many vacancies would you say you have now?
We have, off the top of my head, I don't know the exact number, but
BJ?
I don't know, probably.
I do have it, so sorry. I just pulled it up. We get that weekly. It's 14.
Okay.
And there are 72 and a half staff members that are allocated to that, positions that are allocated to that facility.
Are they working 16-hour days?
Some do, not always.
Like what we're seeing in the male facilities, so you've seen the same thing.
Yeah. Some groups of officers, we have four teams. Some are better staffed than others, so there are, there are gaps. So there are 4-hour shifts beyond the 12-hour mandatory shift that's part of their daily routine that do appear scheduled. Yeah.
Are new hires staying?
They staying? Yes.
Good, yeah.
Very good. We do have a very young staff. We have some officers who retired during the whole COVID pandemic. And so we've had a crew of more recent officers that are, I think I see them as opportunity.
Thank you.
Here.
Excuse me for me.
We began the session hearing some pretty significant concerns from Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, ACLU, Human Rights Commission on ICE detainees and their access to legal consult. We then heard from the commissioner. There was a pretty significant gap between perspectives on how good or bad that all is. We were recently at the St. Albans facility. They talked to us a little bit about how, I guess, even the arrival of VAP especially has maybe trailed off from weekly to
Yes.
bi-monthly to
Yes.
maybe even monthly. They also talked about the introduction of, this is a lot, I'm sorry, I'm throwing it all on you. The introduction of the Proprio tablets, which has improved language access. At the time when we were there, I don't think VAP had access to that yet. But that was one of their complaints, is that language interpretation was insufficient to be able to provide their clients with the due process they need. So I'd like to hear from you, what is the current status? How do you think things have? And I think I heard also that very recently, maybe even since we were at St. Albans, those groups, those advocacy groups, ACLU, VAP, may have toured again since we've left St. Albans. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that journey since you've arrived, all the way back from when there was a really significant gap in it's good, it's not, to where we are now.
Okay, so when I first began in January, we had maybe 6 iced teenies. We are now down to 1. We had multiple languages, and now there's only an individual that speaks Haitian Creole. So I expect that's probably why VAP has not been in as often, because we only have 1 to take. Since the implementation of we've had the Proprio, access to Proprio via, we've had phone translation. When VAP would come in, they would bring their own translators. But now we do have iPads, we have retrofitted iPhones that open up and you can only access the translation. App. And then we have, I don't even remember what they're called, but they're just these little language, what are they? Pocket Talk. And they translate like 300 different languages instantly. So now we have more than enough access. We have, I would say, we probably have 10 different devices for translation. Those are accessible by mental health, by medical, by the correction staff, the supervisory security staff, volunteers, and then VAP when they come in. If they don't want to bring their own translator, they can use one of our menu devices. We do have signage that is up in both, in the unit where our individual who speaks Haitian Creole is housed. We do have language as far as access to medical, mental health. Any of those institutional needs, they are by the phones. So we have Spanish and Haitian Creole. And if we get individuals that speak other languages than that, we do have access to print off additional posters. So we will be able to accommodate individuals depending on what their language is.
And any forms that we need translated, we just send them to Jacqueline Rose, who's our ABA person, and she can have the forms translated in whatever language you want them to be translated in.
How would you classify now your relationship with those advocacy groups, ACLU, VAP, Human Rights Commission?
I think they're stable.
Okay.
I think that they have a better understanding of what we offer now, that they have had a tour. And they do see the areas where, we have improved as far as the access to multiple devices.
Yes. Is your staff using it?
Yes. Yes. Caseworkers, medical staff.
Okay, that's fine.
I think I heard that presently you've got about 14 openings that you're trying to fill.
We do.
And my ignorance of your staff, are they all entry level or are they? What I'd like to understand is the minimum credentials for the people you're looking for. Is that a reasonable question or is that totally obtuse because there are so many different kinds of positions?
Well, we're mainly looking for correction officers.
Okay.
Just CO1 positions. There's a very minimal qualification as far as, individual areas of specialty are concerned. We've had people that have recently graduated from high school. We've got, college graduates who majored in criminal justice. We have individuals coming home from the military. This is a great entry level into state employment. So different levels of experience. We're not, the bar isn't very high. We're just, I think that the way that we've evolved as a society, we look probably not at corrections as a career because not a lot of people want to be a part of it because they see it as the old regime. We're trying to bring it into the, the modern times with not treating people with cruelty, but instead offering them the programs and what they need in order to never come back to a correctional facility. So I don't know that the reputation of being a correction officer has been updated by, the people in general, so that I think that they have that old archaic, outdated view. And so maybe, we do have an open house that's coming up. We're hoping to, get more faces out there of corrections, that it's not all, whatever they've seen on TV. It's, we have people with a vast age range of, different genders, different gender identities, different levels of education. And we're hoping that when people see that you don't have to look or act like a certain specific stereotype, that it's going to open up more individuals to apply for the positions.
I try it again though, because I'm just trying to get the bottom. They'd have to be 18 or?
Yes.
They have
Okay,
to
do they have to have a GED? Or-
Yes, high school diploma.
The requirement by statute in the classification for a correctional officer one is a high school diploma or GED. That's it.
That's it. Okay, and then for there, it's interview, personality, drive, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I was trying to get
recommendations
at.
from others. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Me?
I'm just gonna say
Thinking about it? Yeah.
something that I think is really good that's working at Chittenden is that since Carolyn's been there, so it's not just one, like the recruitment and retention officer does the interview, but then she takes the time to like meet them before the decision's made. So, and she's getting a feel of if that person's going to be, a good fit for the facility too. So I think that that's a positive thing that she's been doing since she started there too.
So we have some more questions here, Carmen.
Carolyn, with your background, I'm really tempted to ask you questions about what you think the future of a forensic facility should look at, but I don't think that's totally fair. Could you talk about what the SFI population currently looks like at Chittenden? And I know it's different, but there'd be some overlap with those who were waiting to restore competency and what that process looks like. Where are they at Chittenden? How does it all work? So yeah, both SFI and the waiting to restore competency crowd there.
Yes. So we currently have, I don't know the exact number. Do you know?
I don't know by gender.
Okay. I would say we probably it's not an accurate number, but I would say we probably have 5 individuals that are considered SFI right now. We did have a few others who have since been released under community care. And the process is they are evaluated in the community, usually prior to coming into the institution. If not, then we do have clinicians that come in and make the diagnosis.
Those are well past.
I'm not sure. Does WellPath make that?
WellPath, usually they're receiving services in the community. That's one of the things that triggers it. If you're not receiving services in the community or you haven't, then it's based off, basically we monitor them and WellPath will come in and they'll do their assessments and stuff on them, and then they'll get a lot of their information from what the officers or the supervisors are reporting what their behavior is, right? So can they take care of themselves? Are they able to take a shower, or do they have to be reminded to take a shower? Are they able to follow direction, or do they need extra help to follow a direction? The way that they're disciplined is totally different than, we can't, if they assault an officer, what happens to them as far as the consequence may be different than somebody who's not, and all of those have to get approved through the mental health clinician before we can actually impose the discipline. So, and if they stay in, if they are put in segregation after 3 days, we meet with the MH. So a group of people meet with the MH and we go over a plan with them. So.
Is there an SFI sort of designated unit for those with more acute needs?
We do have Bravo unit, which offers it's a unit that has only 2 individuals per cell. So they are surrounded by less of the everyday chaos of an open population unit. So it is quieter. They do have access to things that are stress relievers like fidget spinners and things to occupy their time and minds. They get additional visits by our mental health staff. They do have their own little recreation yard so that they do, have access to fresh air. But it only houses, is it 12? So we only have room for 12. And then we have individuals that have more acute symptoms, which sometimes if, we don't have the ability to house, if they come in under SFI, and we know they're just going to be with us for a brief time, they could be housed in the alpha unit in a single cell until just for 24 hours or 12 hours or whatever it is. But we would love to have an actual mental health unit in our next facility where it is dedicated to, serving the needs of this population. As opposed to just, well, this unit will potentially house, these individuals and we'll make do with what we have, but something that's, fitted appropriately for the individuals who have these, who could have acute cells where, there's non-metal bunks or something along those lines, because some of the individuals have suicidal tendencies and it would be wonderful to be able to provide, what they need so that there's not a option for them.
Thank you.
I want to just interrupt here, it's Brian, Kevin.
Yeah.
You said Bravo. You said 12 beds, you're in Bravo. You said 2 people are there. Are there 10 beds offline there or?
No, there's 2 people per cell. There are 12. We're full rate.
Brian, then Kevin.
I guess one little one is again a follow up to Troy, which is you described, the tablets, the translation services, stuff like that. This is back to the federal detainees and, access to counsel. It had been our understanding, and it sounds like maybe this is not an issue anymore, especially with the small population, that there just was insufficient either staffing or space or both sometimes for those meetings to occur. Again, I know there are different filters. I don't know what version of the truth that is, but if this one person increases again to a handful, are there spaces where you're going to be able to give them access to counsel? Is there sufficient staffing in place that if a few people have to do that, are those things in place in addition to tablets, in addition to posters?
For detainees that are of English as a second language?
That's part of the question. The other is just, they may need privacy for access to counsel. Is there actual, some folks refer to it as denial of space. I think in that I've seen the facility space is not your friend. You're overcrowded.
Yes.
Are there spaces available for that to occur?
Yes, we have a very large visiting room and then we have 2 dedicated attorney visit rooms. And we have 1 non-contact room that is currently offline due to, BGS or the courts or someone needing to come and remove an out of commission, like old outdated piece of communication material that it just takes it offline because we've got electrical wires exposed. So we've been trying to
Okay.
get that removed and then we'll have another space that's available.
Okay, and so that population goes up again. There's going to be space for them to meet with counsel. There's going to be
Yes.
staffing to observe.
Yes.
Okay.
Staffing? Well, we'll talk about that.
I mean, yeah,
And, yeah, well, when it comes to attorney visits, there's no there's no staffing that's needed. It's attorney-client privilege, so.
yeah, I wasn't sure like how sort of indirect, observing or making sure everything's going fine. Okay, what that looks like.
Yeah, the attorney visit rooms are directly next to our main control bubble. So there's routine monitoring, but not necessarily, they're not eavesdropping.
So the staffing would not be an issue, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, unless it's, a group of like 18 attorneys that's coming in to visit with multiple people at the same time, then we would probably need to have more than 1 officer available to respond.
Yes.
Bring up additional need for floating officers that
Yeah.
are available to do that.
Okay.
And I would just add to that, I think it's either September or October, I have to go back through my emails to check, but Chittenden had reserved space for those for BAP to come in and meet. So there was, it's reoccurring. It's still the same times and dates. So there's a space reserved on the calendar for them to come in.
Right.
So they just have to call and tell us. So that space doesn't get utilized because it's reserved specifically for them to come in. So,
I mean, I assume there are also emergent instances, given the nature of the game, right?
well, I mean, there's emergency. So if there was an emergency going on in the facility, people might have to like wait a little while before they would normally be able to go in, but until the emergency is contained. But other than that, I don't know. I don't want to say anything, but like the visiting room like flooded or like something.
Well, I don't mean
Like, you know,
emergency in
like
that
that.
way. I just mean emergent in the sense of somebody gets brought in because you don't know when that's going to occur. And so like scheduled space and time is awesome, but there's also going to be these things that pop up that you are not able to schedule for.
We do usually know when an ICE detainee, we do always know when an ICE detainee is coming in. They make a call to us. We have a capacity of 170. If we hit 170 or over, we deny the housing of an ICE detainee.
Yeah.
So once we drop under 170, ICE will contact us and say, we have an individual, 2 individuals we need to house. You know, will you take these individuals? We say counts under 170, yes, and then we can take them both. I do not see our population dropping anytime soon, according to what the court's been, you know, asking us to supervise as far as, you know,
Yeah, nor do I.
yeah, detainees. So, yeah, I say if there's an emergent issue that VAP needs to report to the institution for, we would be able to make space. Definitely.
Thanks.
But we do have that 2 hours every other Friday.
Yep.
That room is allocated just for their use. There is nothing else going on in that room.
Yep. Thanks.
Another rookie question. What are the discipline techniques that you do need to use? If you can give me a feel for, obviously, correction officers verbally can say, hey, let's knock it off. But what else is there? And then I'd also be interested in any kind of incentive techniques to say, hey, let's go out and get some fresh air, or let's take a course, or let's, can you help me with that?
Sure. As far as discipline is concerned, we do have progressive discipline. We also have minor and major sanctions, so it depends on what, what the offense or behavior is,
Okay.
as far as what is going to be applied is concerned. We have anything from write an essay, like think about what, how your action affected, your unit or your cell or the population in general. Write a paragraph and tell us how you believe that this has affected others.
Yeah.
That could be something for a minor infraction, for something that's major, resulting in, an assault or something against another individual or staff member. That would be moving to our unit where it's strict supervision, where they do not have access to their, yarn to knit, and they don't have access to their, canteen where they're able to, have candy bars. And it's something that is closely monitored. So our mental health goes down there, checks on everyone on a routine basis to make sure they're not, being negatively affected by that time down there. And then our goal is to pull people out of that unit as soon as possible, to just use that as in an emergency situation where we have to separate. But there are things like being locked out of cell for 3 or 4 hours, where they're forced to be out in the community to do puzzles and do activities. So they're not, in their cell, like carving, whittling something that they're not supposed to be, or destroying property, or whatever it is, so that they're out on the day room, they're socializing, but also they're more closely monitored by the officers that are in the unit.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Does losing earned time play into that as well? Does losing earned time play into that as well? If it's a major DR,
If it's a major DR, yes,
and they're aware of that,
they are aware of it.
and that helps the behavior for them at times.
It does. It's more of a deterrent than anything. Just knowing that it's there, honestly, as an option for a sanction is usually enough. But we also have things like rec points where, if they go a certain amount of time without getting any type of disciplinary action, then they get like little creamers or, you know, like additional like incentives to, you know, remain, you know, with their behavior and compliance with policy.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you have many folks who are self-harming?
No,
It used to be, so I'm just wondering what the shift is there. You must have some.
we do have some. Yeah, our individuals that are SFI are definitely closely monitored because they do have a history of self-harm.
Cutting. Cutting.
We've had, since I've been there, we've had one who's attempted to cut. Thankfully, it was superficial. But access to these sharps is something that we as an institution are working on. We recently went from having golf pencils, they're, you know, you can whittle them down to be very sharp. To they're flexi pens, they're about this big, you can bend them and twist them and you can't do it. No self-harm is possible. I mean, you could try to swallow it, but I don't know if you do necessarily. So we're trying to mitigate any type of material to be used in self-harm, which is part of our ADA upgrade. We need to we've got these, I don't know who ordered them, but we got these toilet seat combinations that were gapped away from the wall so that someone could, essentially, I mean, they have metal corners and all, but you could fashion a noose and hang yourself. So our interim assistant superintendent noticed that, and before we opened the cell to go online, we had to have a piece of metal retrofitted that kind of closed the gap and made it it was suicide abatement. So it was, and now the cell's online and it's fantastic.
So what are your numbers today? And this is probably a Haley question as well. What are your numbers today and how many of those numbers, of that number, how many are detainees? And then on top of that, what are you seeing coming in terms of the increase in population of detainees in particular? What is driving that? What are you seeing in terms of charges? What are you seeing? Are they held without bail? Are they being held with bail? Are they not being able to make bail? So I got layers there. So let's see what the total number is.
178, I know that off the top of my head. It's our current count.
I've got 181.
You have 20. I don't know where they came from.
I'm looking at Jordan's email from this morning, which
Because there's females at other facilities,
Got
so
it.
that's why.
that makes sense. Okay, so the total female population is 181. Looks like there's just 178 that are at the facility.
Came in and are held elsewhere.
Yes. The number of female state detainees is 76, and the number of female federal detainees or federal population is 10.
On top of the 76, or is that a part?
Yes. Yeah, that's. Is
Not
it
now.
not on top of it?
That is the breakdown within the 178 or 181.
Okay.
Yeah, but you've got 76 detainees,
Yes.
and of those 10 are federal or not? Or is that 10 on top? Those are federal marshals.
Yes.
It's not ICE, it's federal
We
marshals.
have one ice, yes.
And one ICE. So federal marshals is if they are charged with a crime that ends up in federal courts.
Yes.
Drug trafficking, could be who knows what.
Yes.
Or it could be a federal offense. And we have a contract, the state has a contract, DOC, for federal marshal, with the federal marshals for marshal beds. And it's split basically between St. Albans and, so is 10 your limit for federal beds?
Sure. What the limit is. I don't know that we have a limit, do we?
I have to check. I forgot how many beds you contract for. Isn't it around 80 or 100?
I think it is around 80.
Contract.
Just for women?
No, for
I was
federal.
gonna say.
Federal marshals, and those are just detainees. Once they're convicted and sentenced, they're shipped to a federal system, but for a detainee. And we get X amount of dollars from the feds per day. Oh, and then I wanted to get into what are the driving forces, but
Yeah, sure. So like, as you can imagine, we're tasked with replacing the facility and we're hearing a variety of perspectives who come in from the advocate community. And almost everybody has a different idea, like Brian was saying, some abolish prisons, you don't need them for this population. Some say keep it the same, treat them exactly like the male population. Others say build a little bigger because we're passing laws all the time that have people end up in jail, right? So you mentioned sort of the incarceration rates, and I think you have a ringside seat on this because you deal with these folks more than anybody does. And what's your gut like out of the folks in the prison right now? Are there a bunch who would feel like they would be dangerous to the public if they were out right now? They're in the right place where they are, or do you think it could be smaller?
I would say our population is split in 3 different groups. We have the individuals who, in my professional opinion, do belong in some type of a restrictive correctional environment because the types of crimes that they've committed are egregious against individuals, but as well as society in general. There's another group of individuals that are comorbid and have individual diagnoses that could be medical, mental health, just different co-occurring disorders that those symptoms, had they been managed in the community, they never would have ended up in a correctional facility. And then we have another, I would say the third group, which are individuals who have been given many chances in the community through probation and parole, have violated multiple times. And I would bring it back to even connecting to the second group where it's a substance abuse issue.
Not criminality.
It is
It's
not.
not criminal thinking.
No, it's, I am addicted to a substance and I'm going to, do whatever I have to do in order to get my substance so I don't go through withdrawal. So if their symptoms are managed in the community, they will never even end up in our facility. So that population of people that actually a correctional facility is the appropriate placement, it's a small number. But when I understand the frustration of the courts and probation officers and parole officers, where you have people that routinely violate the conditions and parameters of their community supervision, in order for that to remain effective, then you have to have some type of a consequence. So that's when we have these people as detainees. They may not necessarily ever be sentenced, but as you can see, like our sentence population is very small compared to detainees. Sometimes it's just, you're going to go into a correctional facility for 72 hours just to have a little taste of what is waiting for you in the future should you continue to violate the conditions of your probation. And other times they're awaiting trial. So I think that there's 3 distinct categories.
That's really helpful. And do you find like the folks coming in, is prison conducive for them to get the mental health treatment that they need, to get the substance abuse treatment they need, that they're in a better place when they leave the walls of the prison?
I hope so. I think that we have what they need, and you can lead a horse to water and you can't force them to drink, but we do have wonderful programs in place, fantastic opportunities to make connections with employment in the community. Housing, I think, is just it's a problem across the country, but particularly in a post-flood Vermont where there's very little housing available. So I think that having more housing in the community would also reduce the population of individuals we're seeing, because we do see a lot of individuals who are unhoused, and because they're unhoused, they may be committing crimes to feed themselves or to, whatever it is, and getting caught up in the justice system is just a byproduct of their inability to meet their own basic human needs.
And are many there just for lack of housing? That there's nowhere to release them to?
We do have individuals who can release to the community at any moment if they can find placement for housing in the community, which is, in my opinion, an abomination. We should have some type of housing where they can, once they leave, they're able to have that stability.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do that as far as the corrections, are concerned. I think it's more of a community issue as well.
You have to hold them until that's your chance.
Yeah.
Was that true?
DOC's task is to hold people until,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I mean, they house who are required to be there. And if the lack of housing is preventing them from releasing, that's not a DOC issue, that's an upstream issue.
But DOC gets
Yeah.
in their budget. So I understood some of the reason for the increasing I wanted the detainees. What are you seeing are some of the driving forces there? Are they being held without bail? Bail they can't meet? What are some of the charges that are there? I know you talked about violations of conditions of release if they're on probation, furlough, that type of thing, but what else is happening there? I mean, we're seeing this in the male facilities as well, but what's happening, there isn't a release valve for the women's facility like there is for the male facilities. You can move them between 5
Yes.
facilities. The women, you're just stuck in this one facility, but I'd like to get a better feel, what's driving the increase of detainees?
Some of it is bails that are too high, where these individuals they've maybe have burnt all of the bridges for resources they have that could help them to make the bail. We have had, what's the name of the group that comes and bails ladies out? The Freedom Fund. They have been, invaluable in helping women that have very low bails, be able to get out. And then, it's obviously like self-reporting, where they have to go out and meet with the judge or probation officer, wherever they're going post-release, but we're seeing very minimal bails, but women that can't make those bails.
You're seeing a minimal amount of it.
Yeah, very few are held without bail.
Still can't get that.
They still can't get that.
Got it.
And are you seeing many held without bail?
Yeah.
We have 22 females right now held without bail. Ruthie, the LUS there is really good about calling Freedom Fund and trying to get people out. But I'm like, I get a weekly report every week from Ruthie. So right now I'm like 10,000, 25,000, $10,000 bail. There's very few with lower bails left there because she's really been working on trying to get them, the lower bails bailed out. I think the lowest bail I see there right now is $1,500.
And what are the charges? Are they misdemeanors or felonies? Can you get into it?
The lower bails are the individuals that the Freedom Fund will bail out, they're usually misdemeanors and they get the lower bails. But the felony charges are higher bails. And they're mostly for substances. They're a violation of abuse prevention orders. There are very few violent crimes. For our federal detainee population, a lot of trafficking. Yeah.
Or they could be the victims themselves.
They could be the victims themselves. We definitely have a high population of women who've been trafficked.
Sex and human and
Yep.
drug.
Mhm.
Are they willing to come forward with that or are they just kind of,
I would say yes.
so they're victims, but they're also being prosecuted?
Correct.
Bless you, it's still Brian.
At
So good.
least it's not Karen, it was Karen.
Karen's all right, Karen's all right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a fuzzy question in a way, like Connor asked you to get kind of impressionistic or go with the gut feeling. You've talked about sort of a fresh start with security. You've talked about the changeover in COVID and having a relatively young number of new guards. There's a new superintendent, obviously, there's a new commissioner, like I'm sure so much of your job is dealing with nuts and bolts and oh my God, we're overcrowded and the showers are shut down and we can't get into the gym. But to the degree that you can create a vibe or create a culture, what's that look like? What are you hoping for? What are you doing?
It's a great question. Can I get on my philosophical soapbox for a minute? I really, my hope, and coming from Massachusetts, where it is more punitive in its corrections, I am hoping to become a more rehabilitative model of corrections, and I think this state is going to allow that to happen. I think that by providing the essentials as far as, basic human needs, but also providing the education that people need and the job opportunities that people need and making the connections for reentry and reintegration back to the community, getting their connections with their, essential medications so they can treat those symptoms that will keep them, out of the facilities. My goal is to reduce the number of people that are incarcerated and get them more into more community treatment so that their symptoms are managed in the community so that they don't end up And that is my attitude towards, what I see for the future of Chittenden, to be able to provide the services that they need in order to never come back to a correctional facility. And I'm enforcing that with staff as well. If there are officers that don't fall in line with that view of being a treatment-focused correctional facility and a rehabilitative model instead of a punitive model, I don't think they're going to be very comfortable and their jobs are very long and they'll probably move on, which I think may create opportunity and word spread on the street that, hey, corrections is a much different animal than it has been in the past. And it is a career I see myself in the helping professions, it may translate into that as opposed to being something that's a law enforcement. I see it more as a rehabilitative, people focused, people helping career instead of one that's, punitive and, just being strictly about punishment. My philosophies of punishment are very rooted in, they were in utilitarian, I would say, where we're addressing, critical issues as they flare up, what's the best for society, but there has to be more of an individual focus where we are helping people help themselves. So that's my goal.
Thanks.
Just out of curiosity, what brought you up here to Vermont? Other than the job, you were down in Massachusetts, just curious why you wanted to come up.
Well, this is my favorite state. It has been since I was a little girl. I'm an avid hiker. I'm obsessed with nature. I love plants and animals and trees, and this is where I was always destined to be here. And I feel like with this career, I was applying to positions. I worked for Eastern Nazarene College, and I was just shy of getting my tenure there when the institution closed after 121 years due to financial reasons. So I saw myself, at a crossroads where I said, what do I want to do? I could continue down the path of academia where I'm in this, doctoral program, or I could go back to the roots of why I went to school in the first place, which is to help people and get back into corrections and make some type of a change. And so I didn't feel like I could necessarily do that in Massachusetts. I felt like my hands were tied with, if I may be candid about it, whether it be like political, connections of people that are not necessarily qualified to do the job, or people that are just going to fall in line with what has always been done. And I didn't see myself able to grow as far as, someone who hopes for a transformative outcome of my future in correction. So coming here, applying to the DOC, I found myself in this position to be a candidate for the job. And when I got the job, it's like my dream came true. So I love Vermont. I love every aspect of it so far that I've found. I love the mix of beliefs and cultures and the fact that there are no billboards. And I love things that are metropolitan, like Burlington and Montpelier, but I also love the enchanting solitude of the mountains. And I find myself exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Did you find housing?
Did I what?
Find housing?
I did. I was in an Airbnb for a little while, but I have found housing. Yes.
That was my question.
Okay.
Sorry. It's okay to steal your thunder.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right.
Committee members, they
Well, that should be that.
they pick up each other's thoughts sometimes, but that's troubling.
But that's good that you were able to find housing.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
So what's our release valve if we keep increasing in the facility? We could get up to 190. Let's hope not. We could get up to 200. Let's hope not. I know you've got the gym. That happened with the males that were there. That was not good for them. It's not good for the women. What do we do? What do we do? I mean, there must be some thoughts here so we don't get caught flat-footed. Is there any plans that you can share with us in terms of what might happen? I mean, we have our thoughts. I'm sure they're probably pretty similar.
I would love to hear your thoughts. Presently, the gym is our last and only option, unfortunately. We cannot put any more people in in boats, like that, which are small, like, canoe, like,
We've seen
yeah.
We've seen them.
some
Yeah.
of it.
They're just, and they're on the floor and they're 6 inches from people's dirty shoes and it's not humane. I'll be honest, it's not. So we're already there and we're at a critical juncture right now where we need to, something needs to happen. And we can't build up. So it may have to be, finding the land. It's finding the land and building a new institution. And until then, our only option is to open the gym for housing. I'm hoping there isn't like some massive critical incident where we have to have, house a large number of people all at once. And if that happens, we have available, floating bunk boats to put in the gym where we can house a large quantity of people. But thankfully, the way that, the Freedom Fund has been working with the individuals with low bails, we're trying to get Ruthie, like our living unit supervisor is very good getting people out that have the lower bails. But then again, it's those individuals with low bails are getting out into the community, and if their basic needs aren't being met in the community, they're just going to come back. So,
So on that line, I think I heard you say there's about a third of the population which is in that situation. So they're not a harm, they're not a potential harm to the community, they're not a potential harm to themselves, but they need nurturing and guidance and opportunity to be ready for the next step, which would be total freedom. If we took a 30-year population and put them someplace else where they can have that.
You're talking detainees, you're not talking necessarily sentence folks, just the detainees.
correct. Yeah. It would be wonderful if we had something like a reentry house. Something that in maybe the property that we're currently in could be like a pre-release center in the future where people coming and going, working in the community. Potentially after they're sentenced, but as far as the detainee population is concerned, if there was something like a residential community correction center where they could, reside in the evening, work during the day, and then
As
under the-
detainees,
well, I mean, if they're under the supervision of probation officers.
oh,
Yes.
that's, okay, well, that is if they violated their condition.
Yes.
How many of those do you have of the detainee population? How many of the detainee population are violating their conditions of probation or furlough or parole?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say it's a high percentage.
Of the detainees
Of
that
the
we have.
detainees, yeah.
I mean, that would be for you. That would be an interesting dive into that because they're violating conditions. Probation, they're violating those conditions that are set by the court. So the court then determines where they go or what happens. Furlough, DOC decides where they go if there's a violation of their conditions. The parole board will decide for parole violations. It'd be really interesting to know what some of those conditions of release were violated. Was that they weren't, there was an accumulation. It's got to be an accumulation. It's not just a one-time violation. It accumulates because we have graduated sanctions out there for that. So I think it would be worth looking at what are some of the driving forces there in the detainee population for violations of those conditions.
Yeah, we can get that number for you.
So it's not new crimes. It's, I mean, it could be, but you got a different charge there if it's a new crime as well. But if they're circling in with violations of their conditions of release, is that they were not where they were supposed to be over and over and over again? Were they violating the victim over and over again? It would be really interesting to kind of find that out.
I'd be interested to see how many are detained due to testing positive for substances. Multiple times.
So say that again, I did.
So under the conditions of probation, if it's urinalysis testing.
Yes.
If they're repeatedly violating
Right.
due to urinalysis, but not necessarily, committing a new crime, I'd be interested to see that.
We don't bring them back anymore for that. A long time ago, that was saying if you had a, positive UA, you'd be brought back to custody, but we don't do that very often, not unless it's like something significant, but, there's different process, they have to go through different steps before they're brought back for anything like that now. So unless they've committed a new crime or, they're, victim contact, something like that, then we really don't bring people back anymore when they're on furlough. I mean, there are cases if they've lost their residence or, harm to themselves, someone else. But other than that, they're not really. I just checked real quick on the list I got this week from Murphy, and I just saw we just had one person with a BOP. Just if her notes are correct, I just counted through the list and there was only one VOP.
BOP being.
Violation of probation.
VOP.
Yeah, with a $5,000 bail. So, and like I said, that's, yeah.
To have a place where they are protected from the temptations and the needs that can't be met for a period of time to get their act together, if I may say it that way, but have enough freedom to get ready to be free. I think that would be invaluable.
I agree with you.
Could it be under DOC or somewhere
Sure.
else? Would you see that being under DOC or somewhere, some other?
I could see that being under DOC. I could also
Still be detainees.
I could see that as being an alternative to, closed institutional fair housing. If DOC were to, lead that, I could also see it as being run by a nonprofit in the community. I don't know. I'd like to give that more thought.
You also have to work with the court system on that
do.
too.
Yes, the courts.
Courts make the determination, not DOC, in terms of sending them back. It's the courts that make that determination.
And even if it was those who were 60 days from being released, the transition period for that 60 days, so that they can look for a job, they can experience 8 hours of literally being on their own. And when they come back, if they grow into being free again, I mean, it only makes sense.
That was the goal of our reentry for sentence folks. That's our goal. 2 facilities. We'd have one for those who are serving a sentence and detained, and then you'd have a reentry for those who are close to their minimum and could go out in the community for their programming or their work or whatever. That's our goal. Just we gotta find land. You gotta find land. You can't do anything until we find land. And that doesn't mean that you could do it where you keep the Chittenden facility. You could use that as a reentry facility. And then you build another facility somewhere else for the folks who are sentenced, or you flip it, or you try to do it all on one site with separate buildings. Well, the problem with, I know Windsor keeps coming up. The issue with Windsor is for a reentry is really isolated. Because it'd be very difficult, because you're so far from the interstate to get in. The issue for an incarcerated situation in Windsor, the bulk of the women are coming up from the northwest part of the state. So those are the balances that we've been trying to do.
I mean, I've done a lot of job hunting. You don't have to live where the job is. For that 60 days, you can be online. I mean, I see providing a service to transport the individual to where the job interview would be. That's the kind of thing they need, so they don't keep repeating the same mistake because they don't have what they need. Get them as sufficient as possible in that 60 days before they get released.
Problem is, if you've got a facility 100 miles away or 80 miles away, and you're trying to hook them up with employment, they're not gonna be continue to find a place to live and employed if their base is 80 miles somewhere else in the state. That's what we grapple with. They're not, it's not a cohesive.
I did a lot of interviews on Zoom, telephone, and until you get the invitation to say, how about a second interview, you don't need to travel.
It's a little different for folks who are incarcerated.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, that we gotta get creative. We can't keep beating our head against the same wall and say, okay, another year, we don't have a women's facility and we're overcrowded.
We do have, they do have, people coming in. I mean, like, we do have like a workforce development, training group that comes in, works with Vermont Works for Women, works with us. So, and then they're bringing in, like, we have a welding simulator at Chittenden right now, you know what I mean? Like, so different things, right? So they can get their flagging certificate. There's lots of different certificates that they can get while they're in-house. So when they get out, you know what I mean? And plus making those connections in the community, like I said, around, you know, in Chittenden County, right? So that's where all the services are, right? So people that are coming in that meet with these women are all in Chittenden County too. So they're their supports, right? That's, you know, what they know, that's where they're getting that support. So when they get out, if they're from Chittenden County, right, they've already made that connection with like Mercy Connections, right? So that they have a mentor when they get out, right? They have, you know, the CJCs, you know, they have, you know, they can have a mentor through them, right? And that's been really successful because people who have never had someone to take them out hiking, or they don't know what it's like to go over to somebody's, you know, like, hey, I'm going to take you out to dinner. What? Somebody's going to take me out to dinner and they don't want anything from me. So with women, that's really important to have like all those things for them. You know, so where the correctional facility is really important too. Like I said, right now, all the services come from Chittenden County that are coming in. So if you were to go, like you said, up to like Windsor or something like that, there's no services up there. So what are the people from Chittenden County going to go back up to Windsor? Like, are they going to travel to Windsor every day to provide the same service that they're doing right now here in Chittenden? You know, like, there's a lot of really good programs that Chittenden has. I mean, we don't have any space, and there's a lot of good programs that want to come into Chittenden, and there's a lot of great ideas that people want us to have programs, but right now we don't have space there. So we made a big move, to make sure that we could fit in all of these new things that we're having to, you know, bring into Chittenden, but the problem's the space there also. So we get really creative with space. Desiree Crump, who's one of the assistant superintendents there, she's half of her job is scheduling right now, right? So making sure that like we have space for like this group to come in. We've talked about a bunch of different ways to do things. So like maybe we do it on quarters now, right? So we can get different programs in. So maybe you're doing this group and it'll be like a fall sponsored group. So you can have like a summer sponsored group come in and do, you know, something else so everybody can get all these different things in there. But
the aspect though that I think is so critical is they need to experience enough freedom so that they could make a bad decision, but it's a short enough period of time that they can run from that temptation, whether it's drugs or trafficking or theft. And there's a daily check-in. How you doing? What happened? And they get used to the freedom instead of going from being incarcerated to being on their own. That's what I think so many people need. I know firsthand experience with two sons. If you go from this to cold turkey, it's not practical for a lot of people. They can't handle that change.
have you visited any of the CJC housing places? So there's one in St. Albans that's really good. Courtney Whitmore, she's runs it there. That's really good. It's been really successful, but again, that's for men. So if they had one for women, I think that'd be great too.
So to relieve the population that's overcrowded and have a step down unit where they can make that transition, I think.
what we've been trying to do since 2018, 2019, we've been trying to do it. We're working on it, that's why we have 15 million put in the pot. Gotta find a place. And a community that's willing to take it, that's the issue, is a community that's willing to take it. So we've asked you a lot of questions, I know it's past 12 o'clock, is there anything you'd like to share with us that we haven't touched on, that you think is important for us to be aware of? Or did we cover everything, you think?
If anyone has any connections with land.
Yeah.
I think that's all. I really, I want to keep an eye on the future as far as what the future of a potential institution would look like. But also keeping, 2 feet right here in the present and working with the space that we have. Appreciate your support and your interest in, in the fact that this committee even exists. It's good to know that you care, you're aware of the issues facing. And
If you walk away and you have any other thoughts, certainly share them.
Else, we break for lunch and break for the week. Show for the week. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Really helpful.
Welcome to Vermont.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So for the committee, we're done for the day. And we're back here on Tuesday. We're kind of still working on schedule. A little bit here and there.
Thanks,
I don't know if we're gonna do any field trips or anything next week. Still.
Probably Thursday.
Would that be Waterbury or is that gonna be historical?
Historical can do Thursday and it's rain on Thursday, so I think we should just do that.
Do the historical society on
The
Thursday?
dam the following week.
We can do dance. We
Sounds
hope
good.
the following week.
Yeah.
I'd be, if we're kicking the dam to the following week, we'll do that in the morning. Yeah, I'm just worried we're gonna get, I don't know if there's gonna be much on the floor next week, but the following week, I think things are gonna start percolating.
Right, they said they could do Thursday or Friday this week, so it'd be the morning of Thursday.
For historical,
No, sorry, 2 weeks from now for the dam,
for the dam.
Thursday.